Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all virtually joining us today. We're going to give it just about a minute. We have a couple people joining us late. So in the meantime, if you'd like to just drop in the chat where you're joining us from, and we're going to mix it up today. Let's do what you're looking forward to about the fall. I know. I had to check my spelling on that, pumpkin patches. I'm very excited. I love all things fall. Very ready for a cozy season after a fun summer. Ooh, sweet potato pie. I'm gonna have to try that, David. Bring that to Institute this year. Excellent. No mosquitoes. All right, we'll take that as a win. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's not bad either. The no humidity, I'll take that.
Yes. Oh, all the leaves changing. I know. I used to live in Utah, and there's a lot of drives up there, and I would just go up the canyon, and just the leaves are so pretty. I miss that. Not that it's not pretty in DC. Ooh, persimmon pudding. Sounds interesting.
I think we could fill an hour with everybody sharing their recipes.
Yeah. Bonfires. Yes. What was this? The Apple Festival? Annual Apple Festival. Yes, apple picking, also so fun. Football. Taylor Swift is at the football concert. Football concert.
Yeah.
Football game.
Did you see his jersey sales went up 400%?
I mean, it's a Swift lift.
I know.
Amazing. The fall leaves. Very fun. A lot of exciting things. High school football. Oh, just a fun season. Excellent. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. We may have some joining us a little bit late, but keep these coming in. Keep these coming in, what you're all looking forward to and where you're joining us from. It's kind of fun to see if there's somebody coming from the same location as yourself. Just a quick introduction. My name is Cece. I'm with the Institute staff. I have been with the Chamber for about 1.5 years, so started January of 22, I guess going on 2 years, and oversee faculty, the webinars, curriculum, social media, and the blog, and DEI liaison as of late. So very excited. We have a great lineup today with our webinar. Just as a reminder, Institute is a CAE and a CCE approved provider. So this webinar today does qualify for 1 hour of CAE credit and 1 point of CCE credit. And you can request the webinar certificate by emailing us, and I will put that email here in the chat. Both a recording of the webinar today and the PowerPoint and bibliography will be available in the Webinar and Resource Center. The PowerPoint and bibliography are currently available if you'd like to take a look and follow along.
After the hour. After the hour.
Okay. After the hour, yes. The webinar will be available typically about 48 hours of recording of today. If you have any questions throughout, please drop those in the chat throughout, and we will address those as they come up. So with that said, I'll do a quick intro of Joe. Joseph Henning, IOM CAE. He has served as President and Chief Executive Officer of the Henry County, Georgia Chamber of Commerce since 2019. Within 3 years of joining the Henry County Chamber, he successfully led them to the ACCE's 2022 Chamber of the Year. No small feat. Prior to that, he served as 14 years as President and CEO of the Aurora Regional Illinois Chamber of Commerce. Joe is a 2009 graduate of IOM. Joe, that's when I graduated high school. He has served as IOM, Midwest Board of Regents, Board of Trustees, and he continues to serve as a faculty member. So long story short, in the words of Taylor Allison Swift, Joe is a rock star. With that said, Joe, I will turn it over to you for today's webinar.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. And welcome, everyone. Thank you, Cece. As Cece said, if you have any thoughts, questions, or anything you want to share along the way, please feel free to drop it in the chat. She's going to pause us every once in a while if that's the case, and we'll take that. Otherwise, I do have some time built in for questions at the end as well. So good afternoon. You know what? I'm going to close this side so that I'm not watching you all, and then I can focus over here on the slides that are up so that I can focus. But, you know, I just want to start with a bit of context around this, and storytelling has been around for years. It's old and old and old. It's a place that every culture, every society has had stories, because that's how they have transmitted their history, their vision, their values. but it's an art form. And so like any art form, it does require the creativity and the vision and the skills that we need in order to practice it. So I want to take us just on a little journey today through storytelling, some of the benefits to it, why we need to look at it, and maybe a couple of tips and tricks that we can use along the way too, so that we can make sure that the story really resonates with our audience. So let's get back to, there we go. A little bit on the storytelling, and that it connects us all on a human level. You can hear a story, and if there's emotion involved, you can feel that emotion building up. All of the cultures have passed these beliefs and customs, and so we feel those same issues and those same feelings as we go about hearing the story. And the same thing holds true for businesses, for organizations, and for brands. And so as membership organizations, as not-for-profits, when we can be transparent and authentic and give them stories about what we've done, what we've accomplished, why we do what we do, it brings us down to earth, and it helps consumers and members to connect with us. They foster that brand loyalty by creating a narrative around our products, and that humanizes it. And I think too, if you think about it, you're much more likely to recall stories that you felt on that emotional level that you can connect with. And then that way you really feel part of that brand. If you think about Starbucks and enjoying that coffee and that, you feel a part of that brand, and you feel that community. So on the other hand, when it's simply data, not necessarily that we recall all of that. It inspires that action and loyalty. Again, if you take that Starbucks, if you take Amazon, if you take Delta or Southwest or any of those stories, when you feel that loyalty, you stay with them. And a lot of times you'll notice that those same brands are the ones using stories to get that across to you. And they have that lasting impact that then you feel like sharing. One of the easy ways to do that is through member spotlights. These are real stories. Everyone has a story. And I think if you can tap into their story, yes.
Joe, I think you cut out there for a moment.
Okay, you got a slides?
We are currently on the member spotlight slide.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I'm having the screen's popping up. Let me do this. All right, you still hear me, Cece?
Yep, we can still hear you well.
Yep. I've moved the screen away. So we'll get back to the member spotlight. So everybody has a story, and I think when we can tap into those stories of our members and share them, one, it brings that piece of what we do. It's hard to explain advocacy, but if we have a member that's willing to share a story on how we advocated on their behalf, it makes people understand what we're doing and the value that our organization provides them. So highlight those success stories of members and yourself. Personalize the impact. You can talk about saving jobs. You can talk about creating jobs. And as you make it relatable, people will understand that. They'll take that in. And a lot of times we can affect that change and get them to join. The framework behind storytelling is like any other story. It's the beginning, a middle that involves a conflict usually, and then your conclusion and how you resolved it. But that's the basics of it. And I think as we look at telling stories, the more time we put into creating that piece of art, the greater resonance they'll have as we share those stories. And whether you have it in writing or you have it on a social media or you have it on video, just telling that story can create more of an awareness of what you're doing. Sometimes the conflict or challenge can be just simple. Maybe they're having a hard time fighting City Hall. Maybe they, are having a hard time finding a job. And the fact that your association or your organization has job boards and helped them connect with people and meet others to find that job. That's as simple as the conflict is, depending on where you're at on the side of it. If you're the one looking for the job, it might be a little less simple, but it does help to create the value that we bring to our membership and to our communities. The easiest ones that we have are our own stories. And how did we begin? What challenges have we faced or overcome? What milestones? There's that connection and interaction is essential. And talk about the roadblocks and small wins that you've had, what your vision is. Make your audience feel like they are part of that process. Get them involved. If you think about Apple and its technology, its phones, none of it, number one, you can't take your smartphone apart from Apple, but if you could, you'd look at it and just throw it aside because you just don't understand, for the most part, I don't, how that all works within there. Apple doesn't talk about the technology. They talk about real life stories and why they've created the products, why they've changed that product, what benefit it has to you as a user of the iPhone. And so if you are to tell stories, make them personable like that and stay away from the jargon, because I can talk about ACCE, I can talk about ASAE, but if people aren't part of that industry, they don't know what that is. We can talk about KPIs. People have all different ideas on KPIs. So if I'm going to talk about our social media influence, that's something different than just saying our KPIs are going through the roof. Keep that in mind as you simplify this so that everybody understands. Make it a story that they can relate to. So this is this is a presentation I did about diversity that we're doing here in Metro Atlanta. It's just a data slide. I could ask you tomorrow if this meant anything to you. What I'm going to tell you, though, is if you see that arrow in the bottom right corner in about 1995, 1996, Henry County went from 50,000 residents to today where it's 5 times that. In 30 years, we've gone up 5 times. That doesn't mean a lot, but what that shows is that there's a phenomenal growth and that we're struggling on different areas. We don't have a strong enough infrastructure to put that into place. I share this with you because the interesting part of that is 1996 was the Centennial Olympics in Atlanta. People didn't really understand what was available in Metro Atlanta, Georgia, what was available in the Southeast. And when they came to visit, Metro Atlanta went from about 3 million residents in 1996 to now well over 6 million. So the growth is all over, and we can attribute it to the people visiting from Atlanta. Now, the story is going to resonate more with you because now I've put into place the context of the Centennial Olympics causing that growth for Atlanta. Similarly, I show you here, if you look at 1990, maybe about 81, 82% of Henry County's population was white alone. Now, if you look over at 2021, it's fallen to about 30% of the demographics are white alone. And so with that change, that growth, not only are we struggling with infrastructure like roads and that, but we're also struggling with an entirely new demographic growth and change that is bringing great culture to the area, but some people are feeling like they're losing their culture. And so that's a whole issue that we deal with as a chamber. Again, just another one of the stories that we've worked with and why we do what we do. It makes a lot more sense when I can share with people that don't understand why we're in diversity, why we're in that area, when we can explain that to them by showing them the numbers and telling them the story behind it. Similarly, the Center for Nonprofit Management has a great opportunity to tell their story on their website. I encourage you to check it out. It's a great website, but they highlight their vision. They include the main characters, which are their nonprofits that they serve. Their conflict or their problem is a lack of resources for those nonprofits, and their solution is connecting them with resources that they need and that are available. But they've also got a great video there that you can click on and view, and it's intended for the target audience to look at how CNM, the center, can help them better as a not-for-profit. Take advantage of every opportunity you have to tell your story, and you might repurpose it a little bit. What you have in your blog might not be great for a podcast, but if you tweak it a bit, you can use that. I think that the more you use it, the repetition of that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, the more the story gets out there, the more people hear it and remember it. Again, some of the different areas that you can share it: your website, social media, and there's a different benefit to each of the social media platforms. And I think you have to be careful and make sure that you're targeting the audience that you're targeting, you're reaching them on the appropriate platforms. You've got your newsletters and events. Definitely keep in mind the events, and having a story available there is always a wonderful opportunity to share that with everybody. Don't just save it for the annual meeting. Your programs and meetings, and then keep in mind you've got these for grant requests too. If you are looking at increasing workforce development or education attainment or scholarships, the more you can share the stories of how this impacts the target audience that you have, your membership or your community, the better off you are in conveying that story, and keep them truthful. You know, a lot of, you know, we're getting to the point now, I think, where we can see through, if I can say it, the BS. And I think the more you keep it truthful, the more people it resonates with, and they understand, they'll believe you. You know, I hesitated when Cece and I were talking about this webinar, because as much as I love the whole storytelling concept and the benefits that it has for organizations, it shouldn't be a PowerPoint. And so, you know, keep in mind that as you tell these stories, don't put them up on a PowerPoint. Don't fill the slide with jargon. You know, maybe put a visual up there and talk about the person in that photo or that video. You know, you can still use PowerPoint, but make sure that your stories are not just the narrative up on the screen. Make sure you can walk people through it. I think it's key, if you're using images and videos, use real people. You know, we've seen the same actors in that in stock photos from, you know, everything from healthcare to banking, and then you know, and then you find them for something that maybe is a questionable product that you don't agree with. So keep in mind that those places, those faces have been in other places, and if it doesn't resonate well with you, you're going to have that bad feeling. Infographics are great. They're great ways to throw key stats out there and the impact that you have, your organization has. And make sure that you use consistency with those visuals so that it supports your brand recognition. Here is Robinhood. And if you're not aware, Robinhood is a not-for-profit organization in New York City. It's the city's largest poverty fighting organization. And in fact, over the last 30 years or so, they've invested more than $3 billion in New York City to influence and ensure the economic mobility of low-income families there. This is from their homepage of their website. It's an infographic where they talk about the impact that they have and the click-through. See how they've kept the brand with the blue and the light blue and the dark blue that they have throughout their website, and that it's a great opportunity to look at how they're using their data in the storytelling piece. You know, I could have used ASPCA or St. Jude's Hospital. It's a lot easier when you're working with puppies or with babies. But I wanted to make sure that we're looking at an area here that has the infographic and does it well. It's always a good idea, you know, work with your members to show what you're able to do, showcase their reviews, showcase their testimonials. When I was in healthcare, we would use key patients that were very happy with the service that they received. We'd talk to them, we'd do an interview with them. We would use that for radio spots, we'd use it for TV spots, and we'd use it for print media buys. And so I think, you know, again, you can use it all over, but when you have a happy customer, it goes a lot further for people to understand why they feel they have that fear of missing out and they want to be a part of it. So, you know, if you can use the before and after stories, talk about, you know, getting up to the conflict for them and how you resolved it. And always make sure that you're highlighting the value of your membership or your partnership. If you're member based, you can talk about that. If you're United Way or another type of not-for-profit, talk about how giving and partnering with United Way or your organization helps to benefit the community. Here we go. You know, this is another great example of how they have taken the testimonial piece and expanded it onto their website. And so Bell XL is an education service that I believe one of the sites they're in is DC. But if you look what they have on their website, they talk about the scholar impact and they call their students scholars. And so you can go through and read some of the benefits and wins that they've had with the students. But if you go below that, they have the impact that they've had with their teachers. And so it's another example of making sure that you're telling your full story. I think a lot of times, I know I'm guilty of looking at one focus of the membership or one benefit that we provide and don't think about the other things that we do or that go along with it. For example, I think about doing site visits with elected officials and how that benefited them in what they're doing from an advocacy perspective in that. But I failed to think about getting the testimonial from the business owner that we visited and what that did for them and how they felt. And so I think keep in mind that you can get several plays out of one effort that you're doing, and it goes a lot further. Some of the things that you can do with these, we talked about different events and programs and that. One of the ways that you can find these stories a lot easier is just encouraging members to share their stories. Look at testimonials, look at things that they're saying to you in a program meeting or whatever, how they enjoyed it. Capture it on video if it's available and they're able to do it. Create storytelling competitions. That's you can give them a topic and have them talk about what that did for their what their membership, how that helped them with that topic. You can foster a culture of storytelling within your organization. I will tell you again, back when I was in healthcare, it was Catholic healthcare, and we would start every meeting on the agenda after the call to order, and that was a mission moment. And if anybody had a story to tell that was related to the mission of the hospital, they would share that, and that gave us, from the marketing and development side, it gave us stories that we could use and reach out for more information for those advertisements and things. But it also helped to create that feeling of ownership and success on behalf of any other individuals, whether it was the clinical staff or administrative staff that heard those stories. And it helped to be able to share those. And so, it's something that I try to do a little bit even now, is make sure that we have people telling stories at some of the different meetings that we have, so that people realize that it is work that we do, but it's successful work, and that it does benefit others in what we're doing. So I encourage you to think of other ways that you might be able to do those mission moments. We talked about KPIs, the performance indicators in that. And so, there's any number of ways you can look at that. You can look at engagement metrics and conversion rates. You can look at the growth of your membership accounts, your reach and interaction on social media. You could look at it from your annual appeal from a fundraising perspective and what that, which stories brought in the most money, what grants were obtained by which stories, and identify ways to get even more of those types of stories. If you're asking them to connect on a landing page, or you've got a QR code and you want to drive them to the landing page on your website, you can look at where that came in with number of visits and that. And so I think the opportunities for you are not, depending on what you're looking for, you can always find something that's going to measure that impact for you. Challenges, there's always the challenges. I think, finding those stories, we talked a little bit about that, but remember, I want to bring to mind, when you're doing this, it's easy to fall on what we need to do for our organization, but keep in mind that you want to lead with your clients' interests. You don't want to use them to the point of making them uncomfortable or bringing out information that they don't want to have out there. Remember that you're in that position of power, and so you don't want them uncomfortable. You don't want to cause them any grief from that. Make sure you have consent. You can Google and get a media release form and have them sign that, so that that they understand everything, that they've got the informed consent on what they're doing and where it's going to be shown. Again, tell the truth. Limit the information that you give out. You don't want to put Joseph Henning, XYZ Main Street, McDonough, Georgia, up where you're using my testimonial. but you can definitely use my name and probably the city, but don't give them my phone number, you know, and if depending on what you're doing. Protect their privacy. And here is a really big thing, and especially right now in the day of DEI, be diverse and don't reinforce harmful stigmas or stereotypes. You know, make sure that as you're going through and crafting what story is that you're telling, make sure that you're double checking it and having somebody else have a peer look at it and make sure that you're not putting anything in there that would reinforce any of that stereotype or that stigma. It's just important, again, in that trust level and building that brand loyalty. Keep it authentic, appeal to the emotions, articulate your vision. Use some real life examples of what you do and describe the issue or the struggle and how you successfully overcame that for them. Make sure that you're communicating to your target audience. Part of that bibliography that Cece talked about, there's a couple books in there, and some of you that might have been in my marketing or communications classes know that there's the one-page marketing plan, and in there we talk about who that target audience is, and we help to identify who it is. If you've got a picture of who it is, it's a lot easier to speak to them, to write to them, and create this artwork. You know, collect stories from others. Don't feel like you've got to bring it all on your own. Talk to program leaders. If there's somebody leading up a leadership program, talk to them and see who might be good to reach out to. And always update those stories. You can leave them on in a repository on your website, but make sure you're updating it because, you know, I think we've all been to websites where we're looking for something and the most recent information we can find is from 2000. Create a team around that, proofread. There's you know, anything that's a best practice in any of our communications is definitely a best practice in storytelling. This just briefly, I think most of this we've talked about, but I wanted to leave you with a few of these thoughts. Again, don't use the business speak. Use your visuals, show your ideas that way. Again, your original photos, your original video goes a lot further than the stock photos. I think sometimes it's easy to rely on the stock photos and we get in such a hurry. But if you see a stock photo you like, by all means, keep that in mind as you're trying to vision out what that original photo looks like and what you liked about that stock photo. Outline your plot and message is a good one. Be honest and truthful. Go deep into the story. Let them really feel like a part of it. Be descriptive. You know, it doesn't have to be a dark and rainy night, but you know, at least give them some feeling that they're with you. Just a quick conclusion, you know, we talked about mission moments. I encourage you to find ways within your agendas and committee meetings to keep these storytelling going then and taking notes and coming back. You know, think about the great movies and books and that you've read or seen and where those stories came from and how you can tell similar stories with what you're doing. Psychologists, you know, say that the human mind, the way it's running and structured in that, pieces of that experience that we hear in that story become part of our lives. And so we take that internally, it's ingrained in us. And so as we think about what we're facing and looking at ways to succeed, those stories come back and we really start to remember them. And if you have a good story, if you tell a good story, people will remember that. Again, use repetition and engage your influencers in that. But I want to pause for just a minute and Cece, we have any questions? Anybody have any questions there?
So we haven't had any questions in the chat yet, but
Okay.
I would definitely encourage at this time for any questions that you all have for Joe and just continue the conversation here around it.
Yeah, I think quickly, if anybody has any thoughts to share, any ways that they've had their stories shared, any best practices or successes you might have had around that, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to share them. You know, that is always one of the great ways that you get more stories to tell is by listening to others, and a great storyteller does listen to others. No. All right, that's all right.
Yeah,
I was
and
either
if
really
anybody
good
does,
or really boring.
Yeah, and if anybody does feel so inclined, go ahead and either type in the chat, or if you'd like to just raise your hand on Teams, we can go ahead and make sure that you're unmuted just to share your question.
All right, well, you guys are looking at some of those. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'll share my contact information in the next slide. But right now, any of you that have had me for faculty at Institute know that I love sharing book titles and books with you all. And so some of the personal recommendations that I have today is start with why. I know that we've all heard that, but when you have your why, it's a lot easier to talk about where your organization is from and what your organization is doing, because you know that what that answer is. New Power is a couple years old. It's a great story on hyper-connected world and how it's changed the way communications and change management has been done. And then just a couple other storybooks, the story selling method.
Real quick, Joe, we do have a comment. I'll jump right here in the middle of the book recommendations.
Okay.
So David shared, I lead a social service nonprofit and I have a mission moment at board meetings so the board can hear from our staff how our people make a difference.
I think that's great, David. That's exactly what you want, because now you've got more evangelists out there telling those stories. And so if you can show your board, anybody out there, if you show your board the value of what your programs are, they can share that, but they also become more supportive of it. So if you're looking at adding an FTE, or you need to, make any changes in that, they'll have a better idea of what it is that you're doing. That's a great example, David. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I encourage you, if you are interested in learning more about storytelling, and that the bibliography is out on the website. There's some great stories out, or some great books out there. There's also a few things on identifying the target audience in that. And so please, if you have questions on that, check those out. Let me know. I will be happy to talk to you in that. But just remember, storytelling goes a long way. Sometimes it's easier and less expensive than some of the other marketing pieces that we do. Humans love stories, and so it really is an opportunity for you to engage them and work with them to make your story clear to them, raise those funds, get those volunteers in place, some new members. I think one last thought.
And then I do have a question for you.
Okay.
As well.
Okay.
We'll do it before your thought. Is there a particular corporate story that inspires you or your organization's story?
There's so many great stories out there. And I think, as we look at, so we were talking a little bit before we started the webinar and what we experienced through the pandemic and that. And I will share with you that what we found so much difficulty with was that growth that the community saw. And then the social uprisings that came out with George Floyd and a lot of that was happening at the time. Well, what happened during that time here in Henry County was a group of commissioners decided that they wanted to remove the Confederate monument from the county courtyard park in the downtown. They did it in the dark of night. So there was a lot of unrest going on here from the longstanding residents of Henry County, because that just wasn't right. There was confusion over what it was, and some were even calling it Patrick Henry. It was not Patrick Henry. It was a Confederate soldier. It said that there. But the long and the short was that there was just so much grief in that going on that we started doing community dialogues and really getting out to talk to the individuals involved and talking through all of that. And so that was one of the pieces that we submitted in the application for Chamber of the Year. And I think that that's one of the examples of where chambers can step up and lead in the community that others might not be taking that lead. And so, I think as you think about what your organization does, identify those areas that you're great at. And those are going to be the fun stories to come up with. Those are going to be the empowering stories that you will appreciate. And that'll go a long way. I think a lot of times too, we get caught in that exhaustion that we feel day in and day out as we do what we do. And sometimes when we can go back and look at those stories and hear those stories from the perspective of our members or consumers, I think it helps to reinvigorate us and re-energize us to keep on with that mission. Everybody loves a story, a good story, and I think that as you leverage it, it does definitely make it a lot more beneficial and to share what it is that you do from a community benefit.
Thank you, Joe. And we do have another question, a comment that's a tough conversation to navigate, courageous. And then a question, I'm looking for a good motivational story for a networking event. Do you have any suggestions?
Sharon, I think that's a great question, great question. But I think if you talk to some of your key leaders within your programming and see see if you guys, if you and the staff, you and the leadership, your membership, and that can identify someone that had a great benefit from networking. Do they make a great connection and make it, a $10 sale or $1 million sale or whatever? I as an aside, here's something just for you to think about. We do a program in our new our small business resource center, and I stole topic takeover, by the way, Cece. And so we take about 10-15 minutes during this networking event, and somebody shares some information with the people in attendance, and then they get to tour the small business resource center, and we tell them all about the great things we do. But that's me telling about all the great things we do. Kind of, after a while, they hear it over and over. So we do these topic takeovers, and we've had people come in and talk about, LinkedIn and cybersecurity. And so we had one of our insurance agents want to do next month's topic takeover. And so I said, that's great. I said, I think it's time we have somebody talk about, what insurance you need as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner. And they said, oh, no, they're not going to talk about insurance. And I'm like, well, what are they going to talk about? And they said, my team, one of my team says, he's going to talk about the benefits of, effectively using your chamber membership. And I'm like, wow, okay, all right, that's great. It didn't occur to me, but he is so sold on the value that he gets from his chamber membership that's what he wants to talk about and how he effectively uses that to get his business. And so I think a lot of times we overlook others that could make that same presentation because we're looking so myopic on somebody to be motivational or whatever, that we could throw that open and we could find people to talk about networking and things like that. So I think keep that in mind as you do. If anybody else has any ideas on motivational stories or anything, feel free to drop those in the chat. Let's see, Shruti, annual report into an interactive. Great. And shared at your annual meeting. I will tell you that with the pandemic, I think we all had to cancel a whole bunch of events during that year. And so one of the events that we had to cancel was our annual meeting. And what we did that year was we professionally videotaped an interview that I had with the chair that was coming in and the chair that was leaving, and talked about the highs and lows of the year, what we accomplished, and they gave their perspectives on it. And then we kept doing that for the last 2 years. We've done that same video, but that way we can also repurpose that out onto YouTube and out onto social media. We can use that at our member orientation, so new members can hear some of the advantages of some of the great projects of the last year in that. And so I think if you think about ways that you can repurpose those as well, that's a great investment for you to do the video so that you can share it elsewhere. Okay, any other questions? All right, Cece, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Joe. And if there are any questions, go ahead and type those in. Just as a wrap up, we will conclude. Thank you, Joe, for sharing with us. I know I took
Absolutely.
away takeaways here. I love what you mentioned of, we get caught in the day-to-day
Yeah.
that when we hear those stories, it really does help reinvigorate and just remind us why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And thank you to those on the call today. And Joe, thank you for the topic takeover shout out. So just for those that are not familiar, each month this year, we are focusing on a different topic that's taught at Institute, and theming our content around that. So the webinars, our testimonials, and then if you haven't tuned into our Institute podcast, this is IOM. Check that out on any platform where podcasts are available, or if you visit our social media site or just our website, we have that linked as well. So again, thank you, Joe, for sharing. And if you have
My
any
pleasure.
questions for Joe, reach out. Just as a reminder for those that hopped on late, Institute is a CAE-CCE approved provider, so this does qualify for 1 hour of CAE credit and 1 point of CCE. Go ahead and just email us at the IOM inbox, and that's pinned in the chat there. And the webinar will be available about 48 hours, and the PowerPoints as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the fall.
Yeah.
And take
Thank
care.
you all. Karen, it was great to see you on board. Thank you.
I know, yeah.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
the Joe Chamber.
Yeah.
X.
But yeah, I almost put the bird on there, but I was like, kind of not the right color. So yeah, thank you all. I appreciate it. Please feel free to reach out if you have questions or thoughts. You've got my email, my phone number, my Twitter handle, and look forward to seeing some of you at one of the sites in the next year or so. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Cece. Talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye.